I decided to give a sermon to myself tonight. Okay, so you're just kind of along for the ride. For those of you who've been around me the last couple of weeks, you'll get it. You know, is the past better than the future? This is a central concern of the Torah portion for this Shabbat. So here's where we are. Life is tough for the Israelites. They're wandering the wilderness, recognizing that there's going to be 40 years of wandering. And life is not a picnic. And there is recorded one incident after another of their complaining. People are especially tired of the food. And in Numbers 11, it is reported that the riffraff among the Israelites took to complaining bitterly before the Lord. They justified their complaints and their gluttonous craving by recalling how much better life was in Egypt. And I'll quote for you what they said. If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost. Also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but manna. Evidently, they wanted kosher barbecue and they weren't getting it. The problem is their memory is a delusion. They're fantasizing about an Israelite past that is totally imaginary. In truth, they were fed in Egypt like Jewish prisoners in Auschwitz. Their affliction was a terrible case of false nostalgia. Now, we face terrible challenges today, and we don't need a list. And I don't hesitate to speak of them. And often I share my anger and frustration about our democracy, about guns, abortion, about climate change. And yet here are the facts. And I sat and went over them at my desk and researched this. I could find examples of it. That life today is much better than the past. And those of us who speak so glowingly of the past are living in la-la land. Here are some of the facts. Global life expectancy has more than doubled in the past century, even with COVID-19. Life expectancy is 76.6 years. More wealth has been created in the last 4 decades than in all of human history before. War, disease, and natural disasters now claim fewer lives than at any point in our history. Antibiotics save over 200,000 Americans' lives annually and add 5 to 10 years to U.S. life expectancy at birth. This is one that, I don't know, somehow strikes me because this was something that I was aware of growing up for some reason. Since 1988, on account of the polio vaccine, more than 18 million people can walk today who would otherwise have been paralyzed. And 1.5 million childhood deaths have been averted because of the polio vaccine. In 1800, nearly half of all children died before the age of 5, but today that figure has fallen to less than 4%. 2 centuries ago, I did a good job on this list, didn't I? Give me some credit. I do something in my new office. You think I just sit there and look out the window. No way. 2 centuries ago, 88% of the world's population was illiterate. Now only 10%. Daily life has grown considerably more enjoyable. In the 19th century, people, mostly women unfortunately, spent an average of 58 hours per week on household chores. Their 21st century counterpart have whittled it down to fewer than 18 hours. Of the same period, hours spent working outside the home, mostly by men in history, have been slashed in half down to around 40 hours per week, not to mention the great strides we've made towards gender equality. Consider that little over a century ago, most people's homes weren't even hooked up to a sewage system. And you'd never look at an ordinary toilet the same way again. I could go on. I had such a list, but you get the picture. The facts speak for themselves. Now let's turn to the Jews. I say this up front, there is an upturn in anti-Semitism. We cannot deny it. The number of anti-Semitic incidents worldwide, United States, have increased last year. The US, Canada, UK, Germany, Australia are among the countries where there is the sharpest rise. It's fueled by the radical left and right-wing political movements and incitement on social media. Yet we have this tendency to see the Jews as eternal victims, to always think the apocalypse is coming, that Jews are disappearing, that Jewish life is threatened, that Israel is about to be blown off the face of the earth. Now here is the truth. The Jewish sky is not falling. In so many ways, it has never been so good. For example, in the Biden administration, here is a sample of the Jews. Ron Klain, Chief of Staff. Janet Yellen, Secretary of Treasury. Alessandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security. Tony Blinken, Secretary of State. Merrick Garland, Attorney General. Jared Bernstein, Council of Economic Advisors. Rochelle Walensky, Director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Wendy Sherman, Deputy Secretary of State. I could give you a much bigger list. Jews don't have any problem in the Biden administration. You can't get anywhere in the Biden administration without being Jewish. The president has a Passover Seder each year. 17% of American Jews say they were raised in another religion. 17%. That's a lot of converts. People want to be us. And we have to, of course, what's the best example of this? Ivanka Trump, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Every serious Jewish bookstore, every serious bookstore is filled with Jewish books. You cannot keep up with all the Jewish books that are written in English every year, let alone in other languages. Okay, you know I'm an expert on sports. Jewish owners of teams. I love this. And I'm only going through the letter C. I have a list that goes to the letter Z, but I'm going to ABC. Leslie Alexander, owner of the Houston Rockets. Mickey Arison, owner of Miami Heat. Larry Bayer, CEO of San Francisco Giants. Stephen Ballmer, owner of the Los Angeles Clippers. Arthur Blank, owner of Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta United, and Georgia Force. I have no idea what those two things are. Norman Bramman, former owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Alan Cohn, owner of Florida Panthers hockey team. Alan N. Cohn, former owner of the New York Knicks and New York Rangers, co-owner of the Boston Celtics, New Jersey Nets, and chairman and CEO of Madison Square Garden Corporation. I'll just finish the C's. Stephen Cohn, owner of the New York Mets, and Mark Cuban, owner of Dallas Mavericks. That's only the first three letters of the alphabet. Americans tend, and this is where we don't want to believe this, but I've studied the statistics, and this is true. This is not something you pull out of nowhere. Americans tend to have warm feelings towards Jews. Asked to rate religious group on a thermometer scale of 1 to 100, Jews got an average of 63, the highest of any group. Of any group, we're the ones who are liked most. Jews are not excluded from any industry or profession except for the ministry. There is a Jewish state, and a Jewish army, and a Jewish university. And Israel was ranked 19th out of 189 countries on the 219 Human Rights Development Index, on the UN Human Development Index, indicating very high development. It is considered a high-income country by the World Bank. Here's one we forget. Israel has peace with most of its neighbors. Israel and Jordan signed peace treaties 1979 and 1994, respectively. In 2020, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Sudan, Morocco signed peace agreements with Israel. I'm going to do a couple more because I did this work and I don't want to waste it. There are 33 serious Holocaust museums in the United States, a major one, our nation's capital. There's Holocaust museums in Munich and Berlin. 3,722 synagogues in the United States. That's a lot of rabbis. That's how I think. 350 Jewish community centers. I won't mention the list of Jewish Nobel Prize winners. 25% of the richest Americans on the Forbes list are Jewish, and Jews are 2% of the American population. This is the terrible data. This is it. We're not in decline. We're getting better. The world's getting better. I mean, I know 2 weeks ago I was basically wanted to give up. But I decided, Alan, stop giving up and look at the facts. The world's getting better in spite of everything that we are getting wrong and that we have a right to complain about. False nostalgia distorts our thinking and drags us down. It makes us depressed. It lets us off the hook to make changes and to make things better. Let's get personal. We should be quite cautious to assume that our own past are better than our future. Oh, things were so great when I was in high school. No, they weren't. We often get stuck in the past when we think that things were better or simpler when we were younger. That's not quite the case. There's a wonderful quote that I found from the late Brooke Atkinson, a former theater critic of the New York Times, who summarizes beautifully. He said, "In every age, the good old days were a myth. No one ever thought they were good at the time. For every age has consisted of crises that seemed intolerable to the people who lived through them." At times, as you know, I can be disillusioned or deluded, whatever. We all can. And personally, I need to keep that in check. Let's never stop to dream of a better tomorrow. As complicated as that goal, the Israelites who came out of Egypt were fools. They were fools. And as complicated as the future might be, let us believe that for ourselves, for our nation, for our people, for the world, there are good things ahead if we can work towards them. And that's really the Jewish message, isn't it? We always talk about the Messianic age. That's what Reformed Jews love to talk about. What is that? It's a belief that the future can be perfected. Even when frustrated, let's keep on marching forward, and please, no complaining about our owning Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.